Hi everyone, Jess here, and today I'm joined with Paul Gibson, VP of Product at FlightAware. For more exclusive content, remember to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. Thank you so much for joining me today, Paul.
Hi Jess, thanks for having me. It's really good to see you today, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about AI and what we've been doing at FlightAware.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So for those of you who don't know, FlightAware provides accurate real-time historical and predictive flight insights to all segments of the aviation industry. Paul, perhaps it would be a good place to start if you could just briefly introduce FlightAware as well.
Yeah, I think that was a good summary actually, Jess. At FlightAware, we're, I guess, maybe best known for our flight tracking website and App Store app. But what we really specialize in is collecting data from multiple sources to tell the story of each flight. And then we interpret that data, we enrich it, including with some AI technology that we can talk about, and then we deliver that information to customers so they can use it to empower their business. That's effectively what we do at FlightAware. And since 2 years now, we've been part of the Collins Aerospace family as well. So we're finding within Collins Aerospace, we can have even more impact on the industry.
Fantastic. So AI, understandably, is something that you can't really get away from in these conversations at the moment. So it'd be really great to break that down a little. How can the industry leverage AI to elevate operations?
Well, that's a good question. I think certainly there's a place for AI in an industry like ours. There's already a really strong tendency, I think, in this industry in particular, to make database decisions. And there's a lot of processes and tools that have been developed over the years that are in existence to make use of data in operations to help with decision making. And the thing that we've found at FlightAware is the quality of the data that feeds those decisions is really important. So that's why that's been a focus of ours, and it's really our core competency. But I think the industry's become really good at using that data and those tools at optimization on days where things are going well and delivering a really good experience for passengers. I think where AI in particular has a place is the bad days, the days where there's weather or some other issue. And then once those delays start, the whole system becomes more challenging, and I guess unpredictable would be the way to describe it, which is where, I mean, AI obviously has some solutions for that. I think what AI can do is allow airlines to make the best use of their people and resources. And when time becomes short and things become more stressed, that becomes particularly valuable. And value comes from the application of the predicted data. So one of the things that we've found, it's really important to identify a specific challenge for the airline or airport and then match that with good data. The good decisions require good data. So the question is, what if you could have data to make those decisions hours earlier than you would have without predictive technology? So one example of something that we've worked on at FlightAware is ETAs. So estimated time of arrivals are used all over the industry by airports, in terms of aircraft turnaround, by airlines for their planning. And we've invested in technology to reliably predict both landing times and on blocks times for the arrival of flights. And we're doing this at huge scale using a neural network that we've trained. So the model's trained on historical data, which is combined with real-time and forecast weather data. And we've shown that it's possible to reliably predict arrival on the ground and at the gate times hours before. And this allows the airlines and airports to optimize the ground handling process, for example, so they can make sure that all the right resources are there to meet the aircraft. Because one of the biggest issues that we've actually found is unmet aircraft. So it's not necessarily aircraft being late, which is the problem, which is interesting. People tend to think of delays being problematic. But actually, often an early arriving aircraft can be an even bigger problem because the people and the processes aren't there ready to meet it. Another example that we've done is taxi out prediction. So we're predicting the taxi time, which allows the airline and the airport, again, to just operate more efficiently and maximize the use of their resources. And I think this is just the start, and we're just looking at what could be possible.
Fantastic. And you mentioned at the start disruptions, which really isn't something we've been short of as an industry of recent times. And I was really interested in what you said about AI being a way to sort of optimize your manpower, and it can sort of tie you over where there's shortages. And that's obviously something we've really been seeing with the return to travel. So there's a few really really interesting points to pick up on in there. And you also mentioned quality of data being a challenge. What are some of the other challenges with integrating AI, and how do you navigate these?
Yeah, again, really good question. And there are several challenges. I think aviation is quite a complex industry, and it involves many moving parts. There's a lot of different organizations. There's the airlines, the airport, the aircraft, and obviously they're operating against different countries, flying through air that's controlled by different ANSPs. And to train an AI model ultimately takes a lot of data. And while the industry is really good at collecting a lot of data, that data is often not widely shared. So, you know, you'll hear a lot of discussion about the democratization of data, and that's a really important aspect to this, I think. And then I mentioned earlier that cleaning the data is a problem. One of the things that hadn't really occurred to me, because I've worked with FlightAware even before joining FlightAware, and one of the reasons that I used FlightAware as a customer was the clean data, the fact that the data was accurate. And we've developed technology to do that cleaning in real time. So before the data gets stored in our database, it's already cleaned. And I've spoken to other people, in fact, at World Aviation Festival last year, and they talked about the challenges a lot of cleaning data once it's been onboarded, which is an interesting problem, because ultimately the prediction is only as good as the data that feeds it. I think another challenge is the prediction has to be accurate and specific to create value. So it has to be actionable to the customer. And I think ultimately what we'll see is airlines and airports establishing processes that are dependent on predictions, basically. So like I said, what the AI technology does is give you back time. You can make a decision based on what's going to happen in the future, because the prediction of when that plane is going to arrive at the gate is so reliable. And one of the key things that we've learned is that the outliers have a really high importance. And by an outlier, I mean flights that operate very different to how they're scheduled. So one of the data points we look at is, we looked at one major airline, for example, and 30% of their flights in total were impacted by disruption. And then we looked at our prediction accuracy for that airline. For those 30% of disrupted flights, our predictions were 90% accurate 1 hour before arrival. So what that tells you is, if the airline is using that data, then on those difficult, challenging days with disruption, then they can make those decisions with a lot more time to spare. And if they need to mobilize resources, either people or equipment, then they have time to do that.
That's really fascinating. So looking towards the future now, how do you see the future of AI in aviation evolving from where it is now?
Yeah, I think, like I said, we're really just at the start of what's possible. I think there could be potentially a huge impact in terms of sustainability, which is obviously a really big factor for the industry right now. And I think there's the possibility that use of AI can become more procedural. So, for example, if the taxi out time is predicted to be more than X number of minutes, then procedurally you would do a single engine taxi to save fuel, for example. So there's opportunities, I think, to take the data and really build it into how we operate in the industry. And then we're also seeing airlines starting to optimize how they fly. So, using dynamic cost index based on machine learning predictions of arrival times. And I think there's a couple of things that we're looking at as kind of next steps from here that I think are really exciting. So one evolution is rather than using this kind of data and technology to make predictions on an individual flight level, we can take the data en masse and look at longer term predictions for mass disruption, for example. So if in 3 days' time we know there's going to be a significant weather event that's going to cause disruption, we can use the AI models with the historical data and the forecast data to look at what's that going to look like, how would the airline need to thin their flying program to get through that in the best way possible with the least disruption. So I think that's really exciting. I think another thing we're looking at is using the AI and machine learning technology to actually support decision making. So one example of that is our neural network is effectively taking historical data, real-time data, forecast data to predict, given these conditions that are true right now, then this is what we think will happen in 2 hours' time. But if you imagine if you could use that neural network to change one of those conditions and ask it the question. So you could say, you know, this is the gate arrival time, assuming the flight is arriving at this gate. What if we were to change the gate? That's the landing time, assuming these weather conditions. But what if the visibility gets 10% better? What would happen then, for example? So we've already done this with our neural network, and we have like a demo of this actually on our website. But it's a really exciting development, I think. And then the final thing, there's a lot of talk in the industry and everywhere about large language models like ChatGPT and the impact that can have. And I think there's a lot of uses for that in aviation. And one of the ways I think we could make use of that is as we provide more data and allow more data-driven decision making, from a user perspective, how to interact with that data is quite complex potentially. And I think large language models provide a really powerful way to contextualize that data and make it easier to access and therefore more impactful to the industry.
Absolutely, and I think one of the huge ways that we've been seeing large language models take off is with that interface with the customer, and how it comes with its own challenges, but integrating that and seeing what that can bring. I'm also really interested in what you were saying about sustainability and the potential for this as the industry is obviously all pushing towards these targets. And it brings to mind the idea of climate resilience. So sort of working in parallel to these sustainability goals is that we're going to have to work with these changing weather, the increase in disruption, and how we can that in turn has its own sustainability knock forwards, because you sort of increase fuel burn trying to circulate around, and turbulence and all of these sort of things. So it sounds really, really beneficial to that area of it, which was really, really exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as those kind of events and the impact of those events, more importantly, become more predictable, then the kind of technology that the industry already use can apply those optimizations, but it can be done much earlier.
Right. And Paul, you're going to be on an AI strategy panel with the head of AI and data products at Royal Schiphol Group, the SVP of Enterprise Data and Analytics at Emirates Airline, and a few other people. Could you tell me, how do you think the World Aviation Festival helps to catalyse innovation in the industry?
Thanks. Well, I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion. Like I said, I was lucky enough to be part of one last year, and I got a huge amount out of it. And I hope the people that were there watching it found it insightful too. But I mean, the World Aviation Festival is just a really great opportunity to get together. This industry is so broad and complex. Like I said, there's a lot of companies and people involved in making it work. And to have so many of those people together at one place, it's a great platform. I mean, there's airlines, airports, ANSPs and regulators all in one place at the same time. So that opportunity to see what other people are doing and to talk to them about how we can solve problems is a really good foundation and definitely drives innovation in the industry, I think. So I'm looking forward to being in Lisbon.
That's great. I'm looking forward to seeing your panel as well.